Welcome to Evolving Ideas. I'm Elaine Smitha, and we have a great show for you. We have John Hutchison, who is the creator of the Hutchison Effect, and we're going to be talking about a crystal converter and some anti-gravity stuff, and where in the heck is free energy coming from? Where is it going? You're not going to want to miss this, so I'll see you in just a moment. Welcome to Evolving Ideas. I'm Elaine Smitha. My guest is John Hutchison, who is a fabulous friend of mine and a wonderfully creative individual who lives in Vancouver, BC, not Washington, in British Columbia. And he has joined me for another episode of Evolving Ideas. Our very first time together was in 1994. Right? 1994. 94. I think I said 74 another time too. 1994. And he's back now for another appraisal of what's happening in the new energy field. John, it's lovely to have you back.
I'm glad to be back down here again from the great polar bear country.
Yes, indeed. So what is happening in new energy?
There's quite a lot of research going on around the world in the areas of the Casimir effect.
Mm-hmm. And what is that? People have no idea what the Casimir effect is.
It was a discovery by Casimir of
and
an
who
effect.
is that?
A physicist.
A physicist.
Yes.
So it was a real name.
A long time ago, that there's between a couple of metal plates, there's a high potential of energy that seems to take place.
Sort of like putting your hands together and you go like this, and then you have this, you feel an energy going between, except this is stronger between two pegs.
Well,
that's sort of it.
It's getting nice close to that, but it's more of a charge, what they call charge plates.
Right. I'm being facetious, of course.
Well, I don't mind you being facetious. I mean, that's cool. That's a good way of putting it in some ways. Mm-hmm. But Casimir discovered that between two charged plates of metal, that there's an incredible amount of energy. And it was done, I think, at least 40 or 50 years ago, mm-hmm. as historical records go back that time to that time. Mm-hmm. And it's recognized actually in the scientific community, more so in the military-industrial complex.
Really? So we're going to talk more about that, but what were the other energies that you're talking about for free energy in this movement of progress? Is this... I interrupted you, that's why I thought perhaps you had something else to add.
Well, there's other experiments going on around the world in a lot in the Casimir effects. Dr. Franklin Mead, who's put in a patent to the U.S. Patent Office, and it was accepted as a viable energy source.
That was a big moment.
That was a big moment.
Because they've all been refused up until that point.
Up to that point, they were all refused, and zero-point energy now is recognized as a viable energy source. There's other experiments, of course, in other types of room temperature superconductors and magnetics. So there's quite a bit of activity and interest all over the planet, basically.
I think that there's a real awareness that we're wasting a lot of energy and that there's energy to be used if we just know how to do that, rather than continuing to use the same modalities that we've become addicted to.
Yeah, they go back on to saying, well, wind power and solar power, and yet you have scientists such as Robert Forward saying that if you have enough money, you can actually put into a project such as free energy and collecting zero-point energy from the Casimir effect to power everything you need.
For how much? It'd be minuscule compared to what it is today.
Tiny amount without pollution.
Without pollution?
Without pollution.
Awesome.
Using natural materials. Mm. And
love it.
It's just that it somehow all this information seems to go away from the general news, the general media.
Doesn't fit the paradigm.
It doesn't fit the paradigm. So we're left thinking, well, you know, the Nobel Prize laureates mention this. Dr. Feynman and many other brilliant scientists talk about this potential energy. And you really don't hear anything in the mainstream media about it. They seem to want to go back into oil and into production of hydrogen with methane, which is, again, using hydrocarbons.
Exactly. Amazing. Well, we have a chart over here with some explanation of the Casimir effect, and I think that this would be a good time for our camera to get kind of tuned into that. And let's zero in on the top left one there. And John, do you want to go through this?
Pointer here?
Yeah, you got a little pointer there, and so you start the one nearest to you.
Well, this was done by a business partner of mine, Grant Romundt. He put together a very brilliant
lovely
presentation. And these are the charged metal plates up here, and certain frequencies are blocked in going in there. But when the plates are close together, there's an energy created in between the plates, causing tiny amount of electrical power. And when you progress in there, when I was working on some experiments, I thought, gee, you know, you need to always move these plates back and forth and have them charged. So what way is there to actually get around that problem? So basically, I got into the idea of using yet other crystalline material around small metal plates and causing the effect to happen on a very small level, such as using a large crystal like this here, encompassing the metal plates.
Maybe
So-
our camera can get in and zero in on that a little bit more definitively.
So when you have, let's say, a crystal within a crystal, you have those plates actually moving on a very tiny microscopic level, creating power. And these plates here are also piezoelectric.
There we go. I don't know, I can hardly see that. Is that now, go through that again now that we have it up on the monitor, on the screen for the people to see.
So we're going here to a common mineral surrounding yet another common mineral of metals. So to eliminate the movement of plates in the Casimir cavity, I felt that using yet another material such as another crystalline material, you can have the two metal plates separated by a crystalline material.
I see.
And have power always being continuously coming out of those two plates. And
Interesting.
they tend to, you're using about 100,000,
Really?
if not maybe 500,000 small little platelets
My gosh.
crushed up into fine dust, immersed in certain minerals and that. And these...
Do you do that yourself?
Yeah.
You create that yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, John, you're amazing.
Cooking it up in my lab. And
I see.
I wanted to try it, and my first experiments with heavy, clunky machines that I demonstrated in Hiroshima City at the 50th anniversary of the bombing and that, and it was all televised very nicely.
Was this the footage that we have to show?
Yeah, this footage you're seeing would be the reincarnation of the parts from that machine
Oh, okay.
for potential investors to take a look at and
Really?
invest money in.
Okay, well, if they get that queued up while we're ready to have that, and we'll be demonstrating that. I'm not sure whether they're ready yet.
Well, that's fine. Sure.
But I wanted to be sure that, here we go, it's on. Okay, so what are we looking at here now?
Well, basically, we're looking at here a crystal converter that used the old principles of wafers and tuning. So you maybe have about 50 or 80 wafers within a tube that needs tuned up with a micrometer, so that when all the little plates get together, you get a resonance factor happening within the plates, and then that goes down into yet a larger crystal, which is a dielectric.
Oh.
And it's actually a barium titanate cylinder that will charge up that energy and resonate in unison with the wafers at 18 kilohertz,
I see.
producing 3 volts power. And
Doesn't seem like very much, but
a lot of amps. There was a lot of amps with these old machines, but they would have a tendency to break down in time. The wafers would heat up and crack, and then eventually your machine becomes useless. So I thought there had to be a way to do this very simply.
Yeah, so it didn't just dissipate its energy.
So that your wafers and
Always.
the mechanical stuff wouldn't break down over
Right,
time. So I
right.
thought, well, why not do this on crushed common minerals? And through
Makes
a
sense.
process of heat and special charging and frequencies, condense this down into a container. So
So are these like congealed then?
condensed in.
Condensed, just
Heat,
pressed,
a lot of heat.
hot, and they're just compressed in then? Is that what it is? They're not fused. I'm trying to find out whether, when you do this, they're individual, like wafers that stay individual?
No, it's more
or
or
they,
less-
they melt together or
It's
merge together?
Can I be silly and say it's like making cookies?
Yeah.
We used to actually used to joke about that, making cookies.
Uh-huh.
Well, John is making cookies again.
I see.
But it's basically, it's like a fine powder of different minerals in that is heated, and discrete components are used, which are very friendly to the environment. And this stuff turns into a liquid. And when it's turned into a liquid, certain high voltages come in to memorize, make it have a memory.
Oh, how
And-
interesting.
And then they are what they call self-reactive material,
Cool.
which barium titanate, which was developed by the U.S. Army, is classified as a self-reactive material.
Interesting.
It doesn't have the power to drive anything. So, if you
Classified?
no, not classified. It's actually in the Merck Index under chemicals. And
Oh, is it?
the reason I know about it being self-reactive, because I had to take this to Japan. They had to look in their index for aircraft safety, and they indicated that it's
Really?
self-reactive material,
Oh, for heaven's sake.
being electrical in nature.
Oh, how fascinating.
So energy exists everywhere, basically.
It does.
And in this format, in crystalline structures and special structures, you can have quite an immense amount of power.
Were they, I mean, is there
Mm.
a consideration of using this in space at all, this Casimir effect you're talking about with these crystals?
Well, the U.S. government and NASA are looking for what they call sensor technology and energy scavenging machines that they can use in environments that are very hostile in nuclear areas.
Yes.
A very hostile nuclear environment, poisoned environments, or out in space. So in their solicitation handbooks, they're always looking for these either sensors or energy scavenging machines. And
That's fascinating.
yeah.
I just wondered if it was going into space, whether there would be any counteractivity because of the atmosphere and the changing as it goes out in the troposphere and so forth. Is there a differential that occurs in these minerals?
I don't think so, because there's so many other interesting things in space and time, such as hydrogen is formed at 21 centimeters. It appears from nowhere on that bandwidth.
Now, when you say 21 centimeters, to my audience, what does that mean?
That's like radio.
That in layman
Layman terms, like if you have an antenna, let's say you have an antenna,
Right.
this would be, well, let's say this would be like VHF 150 megacycles. So when your frequency goes higher, your antenna length goes down to just a tiny little button, like,
Oh,
on,
really?
like on your cell phones.
So the higher this, or the longer this is, the lower is the frequency. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And the higher it gets, the smaller this
It
gets.
gets very, very small.
How interesting.
And it gets right down to the
So when you say
atomic
21
level.
centimeters, you're talking about the distance here. That's what that means?
Little tiny pin.
I am so glad I asked. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a small little thing.
That's very good. That explains a lot.
It's like your cell phone from the old 830 megacycles, which you'd have little things sticking up like maybe that long,
Right?
to 1 gigahertz or 2 gigahertz, where your drops down to maybe about that.
How interesting. And that would affect the range that it could address as well.
Not necessarily.
range, no?
No, it's
It just means that's the frequency that you're...
tighter frequency, less energy you need to actually put your signal
Oh,
out
I
there.
see. Okay.
Yeah. So lower your frequencies, of course, you get into radio, and
Right. I guess I was thinking it would cover a broader area. that it would be more responsive over a broader area as well.
More line of sight, though, transmissions.
More line of sight.
That's very, very fine frequencies in that.
Interesting.
So you actually, when you get into the Casimir effect, you're getting to the very end of the total electromagnetic spectrum, where it goes right up so high that it has been calculated by Richard Feynman.
I like him.
Yeah.
I always thought it was Feynman. You say Feynman.
Okay, well, maybe it's because I'm from polar bear land.
Yeah, I think so. Let me just interrupt you for a moment. I want to make sure that our audience perhaps have just tuned in, that we're having a wonderful conversation with John Hutchison, who's the creator of the Hutchison Effect, and he's been working on anti-gravity and all kinds of charged particles and photons and all that stuff. And this is the Evolving Ideas Show, and I am Elaine Smitha. And well, you have some other things to share here. You have a crystal converter here. Do you want to demonstrate that?
I'd love to demonstrate this little thing. I brought it down, and of course I demonstrated it to the U.S. Customs. One of my other customs.
I love it.
My other customs adventures, which I have many of. And on here is this thing.
Now, explain what we've got now.
Okay, here is a wafer type that has been actually pressed together. It's sort of a hybrid between the tunable wafers and the solid types.
Oh, a hybrid.
And if there's light there, you can actually see through it. Mm-hmm. And this little fella here actually is 27 volts.
You know what this, excuse me, you know what this look reminds me of? You know, they had these glass globes on top of the power transmitters that, you know, they covered them up, these domes, and they were this colored glass that sat, and when I see this, this is kind of what it reminds me of.
Okay, well it's like a quartz kind of glass. These are.
Right. Well, quartz is one of the most prevalent crystals on Earth, and it certainly is a transmitter of energies.
Oh, this is, and also if you notice, there's metal bits between.
I do. I see that. This is fascinating. I hope the camera's getting a real close look on this.
We'll try our little light.
Because we're going to run a little experiment here. Let's get. Wait a minute. The camera's not on there. They cannot see what you're doing.
Uh-oh.
We need to just a second. There we go. Okay. Take that away now and show that it was not lit. Take it off now and show that it was not lit, and now light it up again. There it goes.
There we go. That's
okay, now explain this now to the viewers again, now that they're seeing this, because that makes a difference.
Okay, and in this aspect here, of course, is these wafers are like miniature Casimir cavities. They're lined up in about 80.
So they're next to one another, and the energy is connecting between them.
That's right, and they have very exotic minerals in between the wafers.
Oh.
So we're dealing again with barium compounds and titanates and.
Oh, how interesting.
And exotic.
Exotic, I like that.
Exotic.
I like that, exotic.
Ceramics and that kind of thing that are put on there, and the whole thing is actually pressed together under a bit of pressure without cracking it and destroying it. And this is a show and tell for investors again. Its maximum voltage is about 27 volts at about around 100 milliamperes.
Oh, now we have a.
So you're going to hold that.
I'm going to hold this. We're going to find out what this range is here. I'm going to do a little experiment here.
I like doing experiments. So
okay, so I hope the camera's focused on this now, so we can pick this all up.
So
okay, now I'm going to turn on. Are we on? We need to get ready here. Make sure the camera's here. I want to push the on button here.
You got the on button?
I got the on button. I heard it beep.
This is a voltmeter, and we're at DC volts. Elaine, you maybe want to read that out for me?
Okay, it says...
you're taking part of this experiment.
Yeah, I am. Okay, this one says 2494, and it's kind of varying. It's going... Now it's 25. 2502 or 4. It's going up.
Oh, good.
Are we going to something that you are predicting this will be?
Well, I'm not going up to 110 volts because I'd be flying across the room.
Yeah, you would.
But its main voltage stabilization is around 27 volts, 26 or 27.
Yeah, well, it's kind of varying between 25 and 26 here.
Okay. So that sort of shows it how much volts you can get out of this. Now, if you had about 4 of them, the same pieces, you could probably get around 100 volts out of it.
Really? I keep getting this OL. Does that mean overload?
Overload, yes. It's not going to go off, folks. No way it's going to go off. It ain't going to blow up.
Oh, good.
It's, let's get on there. So at 25:34, I believe?
Yeah, well, now it's 30, yeah, it's varying 36, 25, 36, 37.
Okay, excellent.
So you've got the positive and the negative, one at each end, and we're simply doing a reading.
And my thing is falling apart here, but I'll stick it on there.
Well, that's, you know, listen, you're an inventor, you know. They call you an amateur scientist.
Well,
what
yeah.
do we expect? You
Well,
know it's falling apart.
well, of course,
You've got tape that's falling apart.
And a stumbling scientist, too, which I made love. In Hollywoodland, I did a real little skits on that and videotaped the stumbling scientist.
Really? The stumbling scientist?
Stumbling into everything these days.
We're stumbling into new inventions is what you're stumbling into.
That's what I'm doing.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
it's, I don't know if I get a reading from, let's say, the center here, but
Okay, try it.
I probably don't get, well, I get a
Yeah.
little,
Oh, yes, you've got 17, 45,
okay,
16,
jumping,
yeah, 15, 16, 17, 18.
oh, cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
So the idea is to find investors that be willing to make a stack of these things that you could have 110 volts maybe.
And then what would we do with that, John, if we had that? Would we be able to power a house or a car or the lights, or would it have limited usage, or what would be the
Most likely-
application?
The applications on something like this in time would probably be started in the computer industry because it takes very little power. These things are still quite low powered. And as technology progressed where we can actually lithograph the material
Really?
onto condense this down to maybe perhaps something that small, then you're getting into a technology where you can scale up and have more power.
Okay, we're sort of talking about like I'm probably not going to use the right terms, the chips that are inside the computer, you know, that they weld all those little units together, where it used to have the computer filled an entire room,
That's right.
warehouse, and now it's becoming much smaller. And so what you're saying is that while this is this size looking very large, it could be reduced down to something very small that could also be used to power the computer. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, that these could be powered down or manufactured to a very small scale with the same amount of power, or if not more power.
Wow. So now would these, how would this be made? Would these crystals be, I mean, you would use a smaller amount of crystals. Is that correct?
Smaller amount of crystals that would be more in recognition of the Casimir resonance at that frequency.
Okay, so they would be imbued then with a higher frequency.
Yeah, it's kind of like how solar cells are made. They were very bulky and large in the older
Right.
days, and then eventually they got them down to little tiny squares where you can buy in Radio Shack for hardly anything, and they have a lot of power.
Amazing.
So with this technology, the same thing would have to, of course, go along with it, so that can be reduced down, and you have a whole power source. Now, what I'm going to try and do, of course, is introduce it as a novelty item only, and gently out there, so you don't disturb.
Upset too many people.
You don't want to upset too many people because you don't want it shut down. So, the potential here has been talked about by scientists for a number of years, and yet again, it's, as I mentioned before, it never seems to make the mainstream news.
No, a lot of things don't make mainstream. That's why we have this show. We address all the stuff that mainstream doesn't talk about.
Yeah, I know. It's an amazing show where a lot of avenues are opened.
That's right.
And
So you wouldn't necessarily have to have one of these larger to affect another range, or to charge anything else. Would it be used in that capacity at all?
well, it's self-reactive, meaning they could last for centuries.
That's awesome.
Nothing is going. There's no galvanics in there.
So there's no upkeep.
no upkeep, and you can encase the thing if you want into, let's say, solid epoxy,
Really?
so they can withstand weather and water. And
That's awesome. Well, you know, it just seems like, John, you know, most companies like to have a product that they can, that either needs to be repaired or replaced. And what you're saying that this doesn't need either.
Yeah, it doesn't need that. I mean, why waste?
So it'd be like a one sale item, a one-time sale. But wouldn't they need maybe more? If they have a lot of different pieces of equipment or that could use this kind of energy, then they would need multiple units. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, they could actually have it modular. If factories need more power, then they could have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 units working together to create that power.
But I'm thinking about if it filters down to the common man on the street, you know, would they need small units? Would say if somebody was really an electronic buff, I mean, wouldn't they need several of these things?
Well, yeah, normally, but you know, batteries are. How many tons of batteries are dumped?
That's true.
All over the planet.
More waste.
There's more waste.
We just do nothing but waste.
So it's a time that
amazing.
This money thinking is not going to help, and let's say towards the end of this cycle on this earth. I mean, there's millionaires and millionaires, millionaires, and I know a lot of them, not a lot of them, a few of them that have mega millions that could really make a difference, but they hang on to the money. And one is a prince. He hasn't really given, he sent a lot of cards and letters to me, but he hasn't put out any money my way to do something to help the world here. And it's not going to do all these people any good in the long term.
No.
When the climate is so drastically changed and the oil slowly runs out. And when by that time, however, there'll be such a dramatic climatic change that all the money in the world isn't going to do it. And a global warming conference, it's already passed. You know, there's even debates that it's gone on too far and really nothing can be done now anyway.
I know a lot of people have given up, but you know you can't give up.
No, you can't give up. You got to really steam forward.
It may be that they're giving up because they don't have any solution. But it doesn't mean there isn't one.
I think a lot of these people...
I mean, is that possible?
Like Robert Forward keeps saying that if you have enough money at a project, you can win over.
Really?
This energy is like measured in cubic centimeters to a cubic foot, with a potential of, if you capture 1 cubic foot of it, Hal Pudah's statement is a very famous U.S. scientist, that you can actually power the Earth's energy needs for 100 years with a cubic foot of this material that's right here in front of us right now, this 0-point energy.
Interesting.
And this is very consistent through the scientific community.
Really?
And the DoD, Department of Defense.
Well, then we'd have a lot more time on our hands to do other things, huh?
Yes, actually we would. We could explore into areas of actually restoration of this planet, helping ourselves more, getting away from this strange governmental money system, improve ourselves perhaps, and people can actually create their own things and sort of break away from the 9-to-5 situation. It's interesting in the future what could happen, which is actually portrayed by the brilliant producer Gene Roddenberry in the Star Trek stories.
Right. Well, we have to get to the point where we're not hating one another and willing to go to battle all the time.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let my audience know that we are talking with John Hutchison about the Hutchison Effect and about what is happening in the world of free energy. And I am Elaine Smitha, and you are tuned in to Evolving Ideas. And so what happens when we are at peace with one another? We'd be a lot more productive, wouldn't we?
I think we would. I mean, war and all that stuff is just such a negative force. A useless, negative, destructive force.
Do you think that we are at war? I mean, it's over a control mechanism. I mean, isn't it? It's just control. Manipulation.
Manipulation, control, hatred, primitive thinking.
Yeah.
Which, well, I shouldn't get into that area, but it's primitive thinking. But I think mankind, all humans have a feeling that they do like to be loved, they do like positivity, and they like happiness. I really think that that's in everybody. However, I think that it's, in some cases, people suppress people to the point where they have no way except to explode violently by other oppressive
Exactly.
people that have somehow lost their way.
Right. Well, there are other things. Okay, well, let's see. We have another clip, I think. I want to make sure that we do have. I think there's one more that we have made a note here. I don't think we've covered it all, but if we haven't, bring it up. Here we go. There you go. Now this is your studio. This is your apartment.
Well, this is what was once an apartment.
What was, yes.
Yours truly re-engineered it to I have a fascination with Navy ships and electronics and machines and that. So as you can see, there's a ship's wheel there.
I see.
I've got to steer my course in life here. I mean, good heavens.
Absolutely.
Looks like the navigator wheel on navigator on the computer thing. So here is what remains, I believe, of the kitchen.
And you have all these things chained to the rafters.
Well,
to the
in
beams
engineering,
and the ceiling.
well, I decided instead of having 2x10s, why don't I have 2x20s by dividing the weight up on the floor? So
There's your refrigerator.
That's the refrigerator.
What was one?
Yeah. And more exotic test equipment and Navy equipment, and some of the X-Files sets are on there too that I pulled off the warships that I worked on.
My gosh.
And then there's communication stuff above there, and towards where the light is, there's a radar antenna. Oh, there's me.
And that's amazing. That is amazing. And you have very little room to move around in that.
Well, I got my laptop computer.
And where do you have that?
That's on the floor, Elaine.
Oh, on the floor.
That's on the floor. That's where I can communicate, and I have a telephone in reach. And fax
That's your
machine.
office.
That's my office, and my office and eating space, and taking my vitamin space.
I see.
So I use the washroom actually to do some mock-ups or engineering stuff, and then I often think, oh, it's an interesting problem I have, but I wouldn't want to change myself.
Well, I don't think you can change yourself.
No, I don't think it's too late. No, it's too late. Way too late. It's way too late to change myself now.
So, tell the viewers about the weight of some of that equipment that you've got hanging from the ceiling and on the floor. I mean, it just blows me away.
The weight of it?
Yeah.
Oh, some of it could be around. One radio I have, it's from the 40s. It's 400 pounds.
My God, that's incredible.
That's just one piece. Some of them are lighter, of course. Some of them are around 100 pounds, and I got a sonar room. I have a sonar room. I have a radar room. Yeah, I got radar and sonar and different vintage and different time periods. So
oh my gosh.
So I'm all equipped there, and I have my balcony is a total antenna farm.
That's what you've told me.
And I went through 3 Navy ships.
3 Navy ships. And they gave you entree to take anything you wanted off of there. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right, because I was the cannon expert that could knock down the cannons and clean up all that kind of stuff for them, and made them a lot of metal and money to support the Reef Society. And,
really?
They said I could take anything off the ship I want, so I had a lot of fun taking everything off the ship I wanted.
How did you get this heavy equipment to your place?
Well,
and you live on the 3rd floor. It blows me away.
A lot of it. Well, Elaine, I carried it up the hill.
You carried it?
And I tried a hand truck, which was rather disastrous because hand trucks don't like going over railway tracks. And I almost lost the load up the steep hill.
Oh, golly.
Because I was pushing it up. You don't do that with a hand truck. You got to pull it up. And I almost lost it on Front Street, which is a very busy street.
Yes, it is.
So I decided, well, John, be a little more smarter and try a taxi once in a while. And also the project manager said, well, load it up and we'll just carry it up the hill for you. So it's coming and coming and coming and coming. So a lot of the stuff came off the X-Files story about the submarine. That I put my business card in all these machines and got those on the first Navy ship, and then, which was HMCS Columbia. And then there was HMCS Saskatchewan, and then HMCS Yukon, my last ship in 1998. And I actually kind of missed my ships. I had a lot of fun on them. I used to act quite silly on them with the guns. After I cleaned the guns, I would twirl the guns around like this and pretend I'm duck shooting, which made people stand up on a restaurant and run inside.
I was going to say they're probably scared as a wow man out there.
Well, yeah. And then we had some fires on the ship, and
you did?
And we were using garden hoses and to try and put it out. And Wes Roots, the project manager, says, please don't call the fire department. We don't want, people involved in telling us rules and regulations. So, okay, Wes, no, we'll handle it. As the smoke was coming off the ship there, the other ships, the Edgewater Fortune, dropped their lines and were ready to move off the dock because they thought the whole dock was going up. But we handled the fire very well, and I went home with smoke in my nose and dirt all over my clothes and washed up, and it was quite an adventure.
Oh, you're amazing.
It was a lot of fun. I videotaped a lot of those things too, just as records to show people and that. So.
Now, you had to carry this up to the 3rd floor of your apartment.
That's right, and then my trusty elevator is still working.
And the elevator, it's a good thing you had an elevator, otherwise you had to carry it up the stairs.
Yeah, well, the elevator seemed to be very friendly towards me and seems to always bring it up, although it's sometimes down like that, from the floor level.
Oh, wow.
And that the engineers actually inspected the place, and it passed inspection when I had my raid.
Oh, no, you had a raid. Tell us about the raid.
Well, I had a raid by the police. I did some experiments in 1999 for Fox TV. I was going down to California, and I wanted to get some stuff. They wanted stuff, and I didn't want them coming up because I wanted to leave and forget about everything, go to California. So I set everything up, doing the experiments, taking B-roll as they call it. And I got more inspired and kept my promise to George Hathaway, and to a company in Australia. So I started actually doing effects again. And this disturbed the neighbors across the street, and they called the police. And the police came, knocking on my door. I only got a small portion of that on video.
Mm-hmm. Well, they see all your antennas out there on the balcony anyway, and they're watching you because it's very strange, John.
It is very strange. And then what happened was I went to L.A. We did a three-day shoot in Santa Monica for this special Fox thing. Mulder's boss was the narrator. It was kind of hilarious, the whole story anyway. So I returned and went to LA and returned, and in March of 2000, I got a full-blown raid with the police with their handguns out because I had antique firearms in my place, and they came and wanted to take them away.
Those are the ones the Canadian government gave back to you?
Yeah, they gave them back to me.
That was in the other raid. That was when they stole all your stuff.
Well, they didn't give anything back to me. Oh, the other ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, they seem to like taking them.
Oh, golly.
This is 3 times they've taken these same ones, but anyway.
That's what I mean. They keep coming and taking them.
It's like a joke. So these things are on the floor being ready to be put away in my storage thing. Greased up and put away because they're quite valuable. Anyway. So they came in there, and I answered. They actually phoned me and said, Mr. Hutchison, you mind opening the door because there's some police officers who'd like to talk to you.
Great.
I said, okay, what's this all about? I just did a deal with a gentleman who was an ex-RCMP officer on some trades and buying some old weapons.
So you thought maybe they were wanting to buy something from you?
Not at that point. I thought, what the heck is going on? So I opened the door, and all the police had their Glock 9mm's like that at me, and I said, I'm not going to argue. I thought to myself, I don't think I'll argue with these characters. Put my hands up in the air, and then they said, move around this way, and then they handcuffed me. And then I'm thinking, well, what's going on? Well, they said there's guns in there, but what they did, they took all these old long rifles out and put them out in the hall, and then all these engineers and people with cameras and photography people came in. A whole different crew came in and started taking photos of everything. It's like, hey, nothing was disturbed after, and nothing was disturbed. It's like a cleaning crew came in, take photographs and they called in engineers, and they kept asking me, what's plugged in, what's running, what's plugged in? And I said, I believe in...
They probably thought they were going to get caught between an energy field and be blown apart.
Something like that, but I said there's nothing plugged in. I understand engineering, I understand safety codes and every other code you can think of. So they kept looking around and what do you do with this stuff? And I said, it's just I thought I better now really play it smart. I said, a prop. It's just a movie prop. I mean, it's just trying to get out of it that way.
Yeah.
And they were sort of looking around because their engineers would keep coming. And as the police left after 2 hours, after the engineers, police, and all this left, they still were coming, phoning me up saying, can we come in and inspect? And at that time, I was doing a Fox TV show. And I said, well, I said, could be TV people here. And they always would phone and say, is there any TV people there? I said, no, not right now, but they'll be coming on Saturday. So the engineers come up and they look around, they check above, below, on the sides, and ask what this wall does. And I said, that's a firewall. But the odd part about this, they gave it a clean bill of health. The fire people, the engineers, and the police were so apologetic. Oh, we're going to return everything. Just please keep it quiet. Don't talk to the press. But I did alert my friend Alan Edwards of BC TV, who's ready to go to war if they were naughty. And I said, you just return everything, and I'll keep my mouth shut then.
Did you tell him you already told somebody?
Oh no, no. I just let them go on, on standby, because they returned everything in plastic bags, and they were apologetic, and they sort of did, sorry, we didn't know, kind of thing, And that, gee, you got a nice gun collection. It could be worth several thousand, $100,000 and all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. And they disappeared. So I put in a complaint to the BC Police Commission. And the Mayor, Helen Sparks of New Westminster, said, well, I got a nice letter from her saying everything they did was very appropriate.
Appropriate?
Very appropriate.
What does that mean?
It means that what they did was totally legal, that they can come in your place without a search warrant, pull guns on you, and handcuff you and take photographs of all your equipments.
Is that true in Canada?
That's true in Canada. Apparently, that's what happened to me, and it's documented, and it's even documented by my friend, who ex-RCMP man, who's so upset about this, being an old-timer in the police force, couldn't believe what's going on with this kind of stuff.
But he said that it was okay? Did he concur?
Helen,
that it was legal, your friend?
No, he says sue them. He's being an ex-RCMP, sue them. He says, I can't believe what's happening in this country. And Canada is sinking like the Titanic. She's going down fast.
Really?
With this kind of control stuff, and they want to control other things too, like vitamins. But I think, due to the fact that I did work with the Canadian government on these projects, they do have, they would know. Hutchison, type them in the computer, oh yeah, D&D, Department of National Defence Canada, and all the experiments I did do. And I think a lot of this was a ruse to see what I was doing in there. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, who's going to go in and take out a bunch of muskets, which are flintlocks, by the way, relics, and go through the song and dance with all these engineers. And I sent some of the cards off to my friend Ken Shoulders in Bodega, California. The original cards that they gave me. Give me your cards. I'm interested.
Oh, really?
Sure, I got their cards. I got their names, cards, and everything else. And oddly enough, I was called down to the New Westminster Police Department on an issue of that they had a bomb in New York, that Montauk base. Oh? Yeah. And they said, and this is another one, I brought Gene Manning along as a witness. I said, Jeannie, you want to go on a real X-Files adventure? Let's go to the New West Police. They phoned me up and said they had some information. So
good that she went with you.
Yeah, and so we documented that a real event happened, that this guy, this constable said there was a bomb in New York at an abandoned Air Force base, Montauk. I'm thinking, no, this is getting like science.
Why are they asking you about something that's going on at Montauk?
It's addressed to me.
It's addressed to you?
Yeah. And they said they took a water cannon to it, but there was no bomb in it. But he had these documentations, these letters.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is wild.
He says, do you recognize what these are? And I said, yeah, they come from Fort Worth, Texas. They're on a certain type of crystal material.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And these documents were faxed over, and they were in mint condition. Didn't look like a water cannon hit that stuff.
Really?
Yeah. And I asked Ted Usher, I said, well, please, this is a very interesting story. I want you to find out more information. Gene was right there. Can you after you're finished, can you send me the whole file? I can add it to my wild stories. And since this day, he hasn't complied to even me faxing letters to the police station right to him to send me the file, because it's a funny story.
It is.
And I wouldn't mind having it to show off to people, but he never sent that over. So that's my little adventure with the New Westminster Police Department.
God, it's incredible. I'm going to get back to that, but I want to be sure that our late viewers to this show know that we are the Evolving Ideas Show, and I am Elaine Smitha, and my guest is John Hutchison, and we're just discussing his being raided at his home by the police up in Canada, and they were taking photographs and so forth. So this is fascinating. What I wanted to ask you was, you sat there or walked around or whatever with handcuffs on, right?
Well, I was positioned on the floor and sat down with handcuffs on.
You were sat down on the floor with handcuffs.
As they were going in with the crews with the cameras, after they removed the old muskets, and then they went in with the cameras, taking photographs of all the equipment, and they worked their way from the antenna farm or the balcony towards, actually, to the door and closed the door, and took a photo of my door. During this, a neighbor was walking past. And they said, "What is going on with you now, John?" I said, I think it's just another film shoot.
Another movie?
Yeah, and he said, "Oh, sure, John, tell me later whatever happened," because there was 8 of them there.
He knew.
He knew something was going on, goofy.
They didn't look like television crew people.
No. They were actually wore black shirts.
Black shirts. Figures.
The only identification was one constable who had his normal uniform on. The others were just plainclothes people in jeans, black shirts, and that kind of stuff, except for the men with the photography equipment were well-suited gentlemen.
Really?
With white beards, as I remember them, very distinct, and they had all this equipment, and they went in there and did all the filming. And
Well, they didn't really learn anything. I mean, all they saw was equipment that you took off battleships.
yeah.
I mean, they could have gone to the ship and taken the pictures, right?
Well, they could have, but I really think, I'm told by other scientists that they wanted to see what I was doing.
But you can't really tell what you're doing.
I don't know. I'm not a paranoid type and not a conspiracy person. I have no idea. Perhaps they were. I don't know. They made one heck of a big scene out of it and disappeared back into the woodwork without any explanations and really no apologies. Returned everything and just wanted to keep it as quiet as possible.
Right. So how long did you sit there with the handcuffs on?
It was at least a couple hours, I know that. Over 2 hours, I believe.
Did they talk to you while you were sitting there on the floor?
They were just basically saying, well, what are you doing? Like, what do you do? I mean, I said, well, I work in all sorts of different areas. I said, at that time, contact Ted Usher. I was interviewed by him in 1997 about something in Montauk.
So who is Ted Usher for our viewers?
Okay, Ted Usher is with the New Westminster Police. He's writing the history about the New Westminster Police. And also he's head of a criminal intelligence agency or something like that.
Really?
Yeah. I do have a business card.
I love it. You collect business
Well,
cards.
I better-
You tickle me because you've got this great big book. It's full of. I mean, you have more than one big book
Nobody
filled
would-
with
if I
business
talked about-
cards. You're a crack up.
If I talked about this to anybody, I have to have backup. At least this is the proof, and documents are proof. And
That they were there. At least you would be up. It's like
Well,
crazy.
the one constable gave me his card and said, here's my card.
Really?
I still have that. So then
Did you date it on the back when you
it's
got
all
it?
dated because it's dated and recorded because a lawyer was contacted very quickly for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
For you, or did you contact an attorney?
No, actually, the attorney came through the National Firearms Association
How did they know?
because I knew the head of the National.
And you called him?
I called him because of an older situation way back in 1978, where again it was massive. It was a big raid. I didn't do anything. My attorneys said, this is kind of like crazy land, what these people are doing. I had the support of Joe Clark, the Prime Minister at that time of Canada, who is he's running an election now, and letters from him and from other members of Parliament on my side, and also support all across the country from people. The case was one they had to write all the law books, and it was 2 years going into into that through a trial and everything.
So you went through a trial?
Oh, yeah.
That was after that was after the government confiscated your equipment. Is that the one?
Well, that's the first confiscation attack.
Is this when you went to court on that, or was this after?
Two court trials in 78 to 1980.
Oh, gosh.
And then as they were naughty people and ran away, and all the members of parliament, I have all the documentation are on my side. The judge said this was entrapment going against me.
Absolutely.
So that time phase, I phased into Ferris Technologies and worked for the U.S. government, Canadian government, all that. And then when I was in Europe, then they made their attack number 2, which was taking the lab away. And then
they're so threatened, aren't they?
Yeah. And then the last attack was this year, in March. A minor little intrusion, an inconvenience, but...
Well, I mean, it's really an invasion.
It's an invasion, yeah.
Yeah.
It is an invasion, and a lot of people think that I'm reacting very mildly towards it.
Mm-hmm. I think you are.
And, it's, I should sue. It's just to get that mega force up to go out there and rattle cages. I don't have it in me, in a way. I'm not a...
I know what you mean. It takes a lot of energy to do that you'd rather use creating.
Yeah. I'm sort of setting my sights in Southern California eventually to move there.
I know you've talked about that. That hasn't happened, though, John, since you've been talking about it.
I know. It's
over
like
the last few years. It hasn't happened yet.
I'm going to have a long white beard someday, and I'm going to move to Southern California. Hopefully, but...
Oh, my goodness.
Just keep on going on there, and really, when you start getting into this stuff, it gets kind of hairy. And I would like to see myself not bogged down on legalese and all that, and just sort of progress off, perhaps, to Southern California and just get something really going.
Really? So, what would be your next project?
Well, basically, my next project is to sell off these crystal converters, get it first patented.
Now, you've got some little ones that you're making.
Yeah.
Okay, we haven't talked about that.
No.
So let's talk about that.
Okay. They can be used as sensors for oil, gas, and minerals.
Now, we're talking about something that's about this size.
Yeah.
That you could hold in your hand.
Hold in your hand.
And individuals could have them.
The individuals can have them.
You're going to sell them.
I'm going to sell them.
And what will this do? And is this a mini version of this bigger one?
Yeah, it's basically a mini version of this, and people seem to like them. They use them for detection of environmental situations. They like to hold them. They like to handle them. And the demand for them is so large that I'm thinking there's something here. I think that selling them in this fashion is not too intrusive into the oil industry and everything like that. That people really want these things, and I promised you one.
Yes, I'm still waiting.
You're still waiting, and I promised other people one, and other people want me to make them.
Yes.
So there's something there that attracts people to these things.
So you were telling me that it's used for healing?
I'm not making that claim, but other people tell me about that, and I listen. I don't understand why. I had a discussion with Hal Putoff, and he says, well, he thinks it's perhaps this 0-point energy does have an intelligence to it. But there was at least 12 people in Vancouver that felt this, and everybody that has handled them has felt it, and also in Southern California. I took one to Steven Segal, who was handling it in his hands, and he was fascinated by it, and I gave it to Tashi Powers, and she felt something from it, and it sort of was passed to Chris and many other individuals down there. And Grant Romundt, they actually adopted Grant, where Grant was inspired to put up these brilliant presentations. And he's been traveling with them for over, I think, a year and a half, showing them to Bill Shatner and Larry Hagman and to Jerry Ryan and all the other people down there.
Wow. In Hollywood,
yeah.
Hollywoodland.
In Hollywoodland. So Grant has sort of been captivated by these things for over a year. and carries them usually wherever he goes.
That's fascinating. I've spoken with Grant, and I said, well, you're going to have to come do a television show with me. He says, later, I'm on this role right now. When he comes back, I think we will do that. But when you talk about people, responding to this in their body, they're feeling some energy, and if I'm understanding you correctly, are you saying that this has multiple uses? It could be used for, say, self-healing, and you're talking about what does it have to do with gasoline or propelling the vehicle or adapting to some modality that is currently in use that would be obsolete when you use this that you were talking about?
Well, I think that, again, these could be scaled down to be a main power source using zero-point energy.
Can we get run a car on it?
Yeah.
Really?
In time, I'm not making big claims, but in time, usually going by what I understand of things coming true, that in time these things will be very true. For healing, I don't totally understand that aspect of them, except from other people.
But you're just getting some feedback that this is what's happening.
Yeah.
So if we were using this kind of a unit in a vehicle, in a car to transport us, would our cars remain the same size that they are now? Would they be smaller? Would they, if you didn't, would you use this with an engine, or would you not use the engine at all? Would this would this replace a battery? I mean, I'm trying to find out.
Well, it's like you'd have to literally replace the gasoline engine in those cars.
So you wouldn't have the gasoline engine at all?
No.
That'd be good. No combustion engine?
No internal.
Yes.
Infernal.
No
internal. Combustion engines.
Oh, internal.
But, by that time, in the future, when that becomes a reality, of course, cars would have changed quite a bit anyhow.
Oh, we hope so. They haven't changed too much. Most cars right now look all alike. So.
Well, they used to consider when they were first made, they got, four or three wheels on the things, and they just burn fossil fuels from the turn of the century or prior to the turn of the century. And they're just modified for high speeds on the freeways. So add more things to them, and you got a radio, and you got heaters, and you got air, and you got comfort.
Oh my gosh.
That's just the same principle.
Really? I guess we're ready to tell our viewers that we're doing something special here. And you are listening to Evolving Ideas with Elaine Smitha, and I am Elaine Smitha, and my guest is John Hutchison, this fabulous creative genius out of Vancouver, BC, who has created the Hutchison Effect, which is anti-gravity. No gravity, it just floats up into the air. Really cool. So where do we go from here then, John?
Well, eventually, I want to get these into the marketplace, the small ones, as a novelty item, and which would allow me to go into my more exotic research with the gravity effect stuff, which I could do at my own leisure without being a boss over my head like in the old days.
Oh, yes? So you would be going into manufacture yourself?
I'm trying to find somebody that would be willing to help in that area, because my business sense is not that good.
Oh, well, you've got some help. You'll get some help. Well, John, I want to thank you ever so much for being my guest. You're just absolutely delightful. So much fun having you.
It's an honor being here,
and we
always.
keep learning. Every time you come, we keep learning.
Always a pleasure.
That's great. And to my viewers, thanks a lot for tuning in. It's been a very exciting show. It's been wonderful to have you with me. And I hope you'll join me next time when we explore yet another avenue of our universe and our relationship to it. I'm Elaine Smitha.